welcome back to another episode of the Jagged Edge. You got Chris here and my co-host Ian.
Hey, people.
Hey, so this week we are talking about the X-Men. We're gonna talk about that as a whole, as far as different genres. But in particular, we're going to be focusing mainly on, I would say, not necessarily the most popular, but maybe the most lucrative part of the X-Men, which is the movie universe, which has been in the forefront for some years now. Let's see, part of that is the fact that Legion, as we record this, just started last night. We're gonna review that a bit. We're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about the continuity of the X-Men universe, the good and the bad, and so it's gonna be another big fun topic. Overall, before we get to the news though, Ian, overall, how do you feel about the X-Men as a whole, as a franchise?
You see, X-Men. I got an X-Men with the comics, right? I was never down as much with like the live action. And everything like that, but no, yeah, I mean, not as many of them. Like the first, it's okay. Well, it's pretty good, and then I think we're kind of tumbled downhill with like Dark Phoenix and everything. I just felt X-Men always got kind of disemboggled. It starts off as this, I think, very clear idea, but the characters separate so much, and you have so many side stories by the end, and that's not just even the live actions. That's in the comics as well. It's just a little too much. The continuity just got a little too chunky for me. So, it's cool, but not my favorite. Spider-Man's the man. Comes to Marvel for me. So.
There you go. I can't disagree with that. But first, before we get too much into that, we got some news that we want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. So, it looks like I'm going first.
Hit it.
All right, one of my favorite topics to bitch about. This week again, Batman is back in the news. The Batman solo movie. I guess not too much of a news, but this has greater implications that a lot of people are speculating about when it comes to the DCEU as a whole. Just like we reported last time, you see the Flash back down, lost their director, back to a page one rewrite. Batman now doesn't have a director, back to a page one rewrite. They are redoing the script, or they are heavily rewriting the current script. But they're basically saying that this is the start over for the Batman movie now. They're still. What? I'm sorry?
Brutal.
Yes. I mean, Ben Affleck's continuation of even playing the role past. I guess he's going to have a small appearance in Wonder Woman. He's obviously going to be in Justice League, but past that point, because nothing else has been shot yet, that's even in question. So his involvement. I mean, now that the script is, that was the other thing. He was one of the script writers. He was one of the directors. Possibly may not even be involved. I mean, there's contracts and such, but, if he really doesn't want to do it, I don't see them making him do it. But, yeah, so the next... shut up. The next couple movies... the next couple movies, Flash and Batman, and they are actually, it's not the next couple ones, because I do believe Aquaman is going in production soon. That is actually after having to replace a director on that, I think, at least once. Man. So, I mean, this isn't a whole lot different from what we talked about last week, except for a lot of major concerns are basically being confirmed at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think of that? What do you think of what's happening there?
Sounds like chickens with their heads cut off.
It's funny because I was actually thinking about this, and I didn't think chickens, but there's an old video of a couple videos actually. It inspired me so much I went on YouTube and I looked for them of a monkey at a typewriter. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah.
The monkey at a typewriter, and I was thinking of that. And then there's some old Career Builder cartoons where there's one person, and then everyone else in the office is a bunch of monkeys, and they're throwing around stuff, and they're being ridiculous, and they're not getting any work done, and they're just stupid and crazy. That's actually what came to mind for me.
See,
I started thinking about this.
And what's crazy here is, there's talent, there's ability present. Okay, Right, and I think that's the worst part about it. There's so much potential to do this. It would be one thing if we were talking about a pool of, only some indie devs or everything else. And I'm not saying indie can't do anything, because let's face it, if anyone remembers the Dragon Ball live action, a lot of people praise the fan works of Dragon Ball more than the actual live action. So
That's right. That was a thing. That wasn't a thing for long. If I remember, though, it was so bad.
Yeah, too true. Too true. So, but the point is there's proven vetted talent here everywhere, all around working, but it's not consolidated yet. And the worry is when you're facing a release schedule this tight and this close, or how they want to roll this stuff out, you ideally want to have your ducks in a row going into this, and it's troubling, real troubling for how epic this is supposed to be. So.
We're a bit removed from the last DCE movie. That was August was Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah.
Something like August, maybe late July. We're about half a year removed from that now. What is making all this stuff change? I mean, I could understand good or bad. I could understand reactions from Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, what people liked, what didn't, and adjusting accordingly. Again, whether right or wrong, then making adjustments to try to make this continued universe, make it thrive. I understand that. We're half a year removed. Why are these things still happening? That's what I don't get. There's nothing to react to that I guess really matter. I mean, obviously, there's all kinds of things happening behind the scenes that are doing this, and I think that's the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue, which is not news. A lot of people say this. There is not one guy running the ship here. DCEU does not have a Kevin Feige like the Marvel Universe does.
Right.
And that I think is the biggest problem. Of course, at the same time, I don't know if there could be a DC version of the Kevin Feige.
No,
I mean, if you look at his credentials, it's crazy.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know.
But so some people are saying, hey, maybe this is a good thing because they did this with the Flash, and now they're doing this with Batman. Maybe they're taking this opportunity to clean slate and build up. Even though they get 2 movies in the can, and they get a third one they're about to start on, we're not going to see these changes for at least a couple years. But it's still all the same. Maybe this is an opportunity for them to right the ship, and they're saying, look, let's we have what we have, and maybe we can work with that, maybe we can't, but we're getting some serious problems here. Let's start anew.
Yeah.
With starting at this point, let's keep going from there with some new ideas as to how we want to move the DCEU forward.
Pulling for you, DC.
That could be it. That's speculation, by the way, people. That's no one's saying that's what they're doing. That's saying what they could be doing. So
time will tell. Time will tell. Well, there is something else on the horizon that is planned, is about to roll out on Netflix that you won't have to hop up and go get a movie ticket for, or maybe wait for that Blu-ray release. This is one I was actually pretty stoked for. Even though I didn't play the series a whole lot coming up, is very well known, very well loved. Netflix has revealed just this week that a Castlevania TV show is in the works, and it is planned for this year. We don't have a precise date or anything like that, but this is why I'm really interested in this. So far, we just know there's going to be a season 1 for this year. It's looking like there's going to be a season 2 locked in for 2018. But it's the format that I'm pretty intrigued by here. Now, when I hear TV series, I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be a live action, but there's a lot of signs that it actually might not be. And I say that just because of some of the talent that's involved. The writer for this is graphic novelist Warren Ellis. A lot of his work, now I haven't personally read, but I know he was involved in Marvel and DC specifically, a couple of comics. Along with the Marvel line, he worked on Doom 2099. He also worked on Hellstorm and Excalibur, and a little bit of X-Men, just a bit. Also, he did Ghost Rider, bit in just a very short arc of Batman. So I mean, he's got quite a lot under his belt. as far as what he could possibly bring to it. But again, the question's sort of up in the air about what this is actually going to be. I mean, the basic idea behind Castlevania, of course, the end boss going up against Dracula, is a simple formula when you look at it on the outside. But there's so many twists and turns you can take with this.
Jesus.
Yeah, the crew they're recruiting for this, it looks like it's probably gonna be pretty mature. They're going for a pretty dark edge to it. And there's been some suggestions too that it's going to be animated due to the Adventure Time production company working in this too. Some of their credentials came out. It's announced on the slate for it, so who knows? I'm really stoked because I was just at PAX South and I got to see a speed run of this live from Bit Brigade. So to hear an announcement for a TV show, rock on.
Well, I grew up with Castlevania. Big fan of the first one. As much as brutal as that game was, we played the hell out of it back in the day. That's when you got 3 lives and no continues.
Yep.
And you had to beat the game with that. And that game was hard.
Oh yeah.
But it's a classic. I saw something about this. I didn't read into it. But I saw the headline for this and I was excited about it. Netflix does it right. No, well, I should say most of the time Netflix does it right. Sometimes Netflix makes some duds, but they make so much that it's kind of in what they do make that's really good. You can easily forgive the fact that they've done some bad things, but Netflix overall has done things right. Now, when I think of this, the first thing that even pops in my mind is what you were saying. It's going to be an animated series.
Right.
I think an animated series versus the live action series, they each take on a completely different life of their own from each other. And I don't know if I'd want to see it as a TV show. I don't think I can envision that as a live action TV show that works. I know that there's actually, I think there has been some animations in the past with Castlevania, and a lot of the games have always taken an anime kind of style to them. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Like, I've learned never to undercut the animated medium for as far as when you're looking to depict a story, especially like this one. There's a lot of crazy twists and turns, and I think just some graphical things that would just be awesome in an animated form. Short of that, I think to some of the adaptations that have been done in animation to live action and vice versa, you've had some that were really successful. I think of Rurouni Kenshin, that was born as a manga, an anime, later was turned into a live action, also successful.
I don't know what that is.
Oh my God, Kenshin Samurai X.
I'm going to bet you most of the people who just heard that don't know what that is either.
Sacrilege. No. If you're an anime fan, you likely know about Kenshin.
Well, there it is. We haven't established this yet for the viewers or listeners, but I'm not an anime fan, so you know that. So.
Yeah, it doesn't apply. Doesn't apply in your end.
Yeah.
But no. But no, outside of that, naturally I start thinking in terms of, okay, game adaptation to an animated realm, which I think is naturally a little smoother to do than going game to live action. A lot of game adaptations are plagued with this whole mire of, hey, let's get out of this medium and try to bring this to the big screen, or try to bring this to live action.
Game adaptations
to
live action?
Yeah, games coming to live action.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's historic. Yeah, historically, dude, they've just been bad. It's just, and it's a difficult formula to get to succeed. Here, though, I think assuming it is animated, I think that's along the right lines for it, and I think that can make a pretty smooth transition. So
can you see? I can definitely see. Look, that I say I'm not a big anime fan. I'm not. I think most anime is garbage. And don't worry, at the end of the show, we'll give you the email. You can send me hate mail for that. But I will stand up for anime that I really like. Akira, for instance. Yes, I'm that American fan that just said I like Akira. That's
took the
fine.
words out of my mouth,
I'll take
man.
that. I'll take that. But Akira actually inspired me to go into being an artist and go into school for that. Just there's been a couple others along the way. Attack on Titan, big fan of
Yeah.
that. Not a huge fan, but it's one of those things where if I see it on, I'm there till the show's done. Even if it's a marathon. All right, well, my day just planned, or my day's plan just changed. If I can talk. But recently, and this is why I have a lot more faith into this, is Netflix's Voltron.
Yeah.
That show is fantastic.
Okay, see, you got me beat there. Another show I haven't seen.
Yeah, well, you saw season 1, didn't you?
No, season that was Daredevil.
You haven't seen season 1 of Voltron?
No, sir.
You haven't? Okay, that came out last year. You have no excuse for some of this stuff. Especially because Voltron's only 8 episodes a season.
Hey! My excuse is watching some of the old school Voltron. So
that is definitely not an excuse. If you want, I used to watch the old Voltron when I was a kid. My brother and I were huge on it, but no. Guys, instead of writing that hate email to me about what I just said about anime, you need to stop and you need to write it to Ian about having not watched the new Voltron series yet. And he is an anime fan. There's no excuse for that. There's 8 episodes a season, 30 minutes an episode. Actually, it's like 24 minutes an episode. With the amount of time you probably spend making your dinner, you can cut out half a season.
Oh, hey. You're cutting into sacred time there, man.
Just set up your phone next to the stove, and while you're making your eggplant lasagna, and you should watch it. So I will. My problem in why I don't have a lot of faith in anime as a whole, and I would dare anyone to actually try to justify otherwise on this, is that a lot of anime is poorly made garbage. The animation is crap. A lot of the time the story is crap. It's made to hit certain stimuli within their general fan base that they tend to really like, and there's not a lot of quality to it. Now, you can say the same thing about traditional American TV, and I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
But I think it's very much the same way.
No,
a lot of anime is just really bad.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you on a lot of notes. Like, hey, I come from roots of Akira, Armitage 3, Ghost in the Shell, a lot of those originals, like some of those early movies and the concepts they presented. That was, really my basis for just starting to actually check out, what anime was and everything. And honestly, just current stuff, man. And that's funny. As much as I say anime, you asked me something about, hey, what came out in 2016 and everything. I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I think a lot of the really strong classics have been baked in, and established so much by now. It's difficult to really surpass those. And most anime today kind of goes outside of those. But beside the point.
Yeah. So I don't. Just thinking about this, my next sentence I was going to say here, I was a little shocked to even hear it form in my brain. I would like to see Netflix, and prefer Netflix, make an anime show out of this. And I think that's because it lends itself more to the style of the games. I think doing live action would do it a little bit of an injustice for the kind of craziness that the Castlevania storylines and the Belmont storylines go into.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. Overall, I'm looking forward to it. If they do make it live action, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that either lands or falls. See which way it goes.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Regardless, it's greenlit. We know it's going to land at some point. But I think you got a piece about something else that's going to fall that got canceled by Paramount, don't you?
Oh, yes. This upset me. This really upset me, especially for the reasons for this. I'm a bit of a horror fan, but in particular, I grew up with the Friday the 13th movies. Paramount Pictures has canceled the reboot of Friday the 13th, which was going to be the 13th movie of the series, coming out on October 13th this year. They were just going to go into production for it, and they've canceled it. I'm legitimately upset about this. I've always been a big Jason fan as a whole, but the Friday the 13th movies are horribly bad. They're great. They're the good. They're the bad kind of great, and they're so awesome. They defined the '80s horror slasher. along with a couple other genres. But they're so good. They tried rebooting it about 10 years ago. Didn't really fly. But they were going to give it another go, and I was really looking forward to this. It was going to be a full reboot. They were going to make a twist on the story, involve Jason Voorhees' father, which I don't think has ever been. I don't think that's ever been done in the movies where they introduce the father or the story to his father at all. That would be interesting. Paramount cited a few reasons. The budget, which actually wasn't that large. I think it was only $21 million. Not huge for a movie, especially a big name movie. But also they cited that the recent failings of the new Rings movie that just came out, which only made $15 million in its opening weekend, which is horrible. Is horribly bad. That tanked. Also, I guess there's some kind of concern about the rights going back over to the New Line Cinema for Friday the 13th. So I guess that last reason. I mean, why get something booted up again and get it started and get a great reboot to it when you're just going to have to hand the reins back over to another company?
Yeah,
I guess why do that? But yeah. Yeah, Friday the 13th gone. This has been in development hell for years now, but they were finally getting it together to actually make a run with it this year. I mean, I don't think you and I have ever really talked about horror movies that much.
No, we haven't. Hey, I come from a bit of a different camp on that. I've never really been big into horror, honestly. The shock thrill part of it, cool, but it's just not something I tune into, man. Horror it either felt too forced or just too freaky for me to even bother with. So I just said, never mind.
Yeah, I think this might be a generational change, a little bit of generational difference. I mean, growing up as a child of the 80s, and partly the 90s, but mainly a young child and tween in the 80s, slasher horror movies were the stuff. I mean, back in the day, my mom had HBO with our cable, and when she was gone at work or sleeping, I went down and watched horror movies on HBO, along with a couple other movies I shouldn't have been watching as a child. But hey,
that explains a lot, huh?
They're on, Yeah, I grew up on HBO. There was a lot to learn. So I love these things. You always had a Freddy movie coming out, a Nightmare on Elm Street or a Friday the 13th. Wasn't a big fan of the Halloween movies though.
Yeah.
I've gotten into those a little bit later, but the gore was so over the top, mainly because they had to compensate for lack of realistic special effects back then.
Right.
Then you got into the 90s, and just horror movies as a whole really took a hit in the 90s. So I can kind of see that, because that's when you're around your later, your 9 to tween years, right? Was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see you not liking horror movies if that was your introduction to them.
Yeah. So it's what it is.
I mean, Friday, Jason Voorhees, the unstoppable. Whatever the hell he is he a zombie? Is he a ghoul? What is he? He's not alive. We know that much. And I mean, it was always the big thing. It was always the big thing in every movie when they take off the mask.
Yeah.
In every movie, he was more fucked up because he would get hit in the head by something in the previous movie.
Right.
To the point where, like, later on, he was just like basically a messed up skull with like flesh on it and stuff, but it was always awesome. It was almost more important to see the reveal of Jason's face than the nudity in the movies. Almost as important.
Oh, I okay. See, this is what I mean. This was your childhood, all right. Man.
Hey, you know what? This was most people's childhood. I don't want to hear it. if you're on my age, if you're in your late 90s or late 90s, if you're in your late 30s, this was your childhood too.
Well.
Yeah, just move on. That's a good. We don't need a.
Yeah.
That should just be left. Right.
I can't even, man. I'll tell you what is going premium this year, which I was kind of surprised about. E3. For the first time, I think ever, tickets are being offered at a pretty steep price to about, I think, the first 15,000 people. who sign up for said show. Obviously, E3 is the big tech expo, especially as nerds love. We watch it every year for big announcements, big reveals, trailers, new tech, etc., etc. This does have a bit of a caveat with it, though. Now, as Chris mentioned this earlier, we were talking about this. The public has been allowed quote unquote into the E3 space, early 2000s and everything else. This stuff just never really was formally enforced a whole lot, and then it gradually became more and more and more focused towards just the devs, just the media groups reporting. So this feels like a process to kind of formalize this, see what happens if you sell tickets at a premium price, get some of the public involved. Let's face it though, it's obviously for dollars and cents and profit. So
I don't like this. Let me start right there. Here's the thing. If E3 needs to do this because they need money, then whatever. If they're having problems with which I don't know if they are or not, then fine. Do what you got to do to keep E3 going, because E3 should happen. That's an important convention every year. Back about a decade, a little bit longer than that ago, when this thing, call it what you want, it was open to the public, it was a spectacle, it was ridiculous. And getting good, solid news out of E3 was nearly impossible. Most of the coverage was just gibberish. It was all about people coming in and getting swag for stuff and talking about what they liked and what they didn't like, not talking about the quality of the hardware and the software that was in front of them. Yeah. So when they shut the doors on this a decade or so ago, I was really happy about that, because it got back down to the roots of it, which was developers and investors looking at what's going to be coming, and looking about what they could possibly get themselves into. So I don't know if I'd like this. I mean, again, if they need to do it, and I don't know. I mean, did they? Yeah. Did you read anything about E3 maybe needing to do something like this, or?
I mean, not that I know of, as far as for financial reasons, trying to fund it. Not that I could see. I mean, that could be a side story. I'm just, we're just overlooking, but it's not anything that I've seen in main news.
Yeah, whatever. I guess as it is, that I don't keep track of it like I used to. Every year I check after E3's over. I check and see what the latest is on consoles and games, and there's always a few great surprises. There's also always a couple letdowns. As long as I can still find the news of E3, then I'm cool with it. But it was a nightmare to go through all the garbage when they used to let people in. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. Hey, I'll be tuning in live on stream. I usually try to at least catch a portion of it each year. It's a couple of the major devs I like, but oh well. Our feel good story. Hopefully this makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Hey, it did for me.
It certainly should, considering what it's about.
So
maybe a little gassy.
Yeah, could. I don't know, man. I've never gotten gassy eating here. But see, you don't really have Chick-fil-A's out where you're at.
No, I haven't eaten at a Chick-fil-A in a long time.
No. So check it out. Brooke, a native of Salisbury, MD. She had moved a little closer to be with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, being treated for a rare form of cancer. It turned out that earlier this Tuesday, a staffer at local Chick-fil-A reached out and actually helped start a campaign for promotion to go ahead and donate proceeds straight to Brooke's medical care. This promotion actually raised about $17,500.
That's pretty awesome.
Pretty baller. I mean, I live in a state, specifically a city, where treatment of children's illness, especially cancer, is in very, very high regard. St. Jude Children's Hospital. It's a name that's, of course, world renowned and everything like that. So I've always thought that's a good cause to donate to. I always like when I hear not just the research being done, but people actually getting together and being active to contribute to somebody else. So hey, good stuff.
Before we move on from this, I'm looking at your notes for this story. What is the name of that school she goes to?
I see what you did there.
I didn't do it. I just noticed it. What is it, so that they know?
The name of said school is Voorhees.
The Voorhees Middle School. Just saying. Just saying. That's
Illuminati conspiracy. I don't know.
Yep. Someone get out the charts and let's figure that one out. I'm just saying. That's a fun coincidence. But yeah, if we can get somebody on curing cancer, that'd be great. I would prefer not to lose any more loved ones to it.
Amen to that.
All right. So that is the news for this week. Kind of tied into news though, our main topic, because there was definitely some news on that this week. We were talking, like we said, we're going to be talking about the X-Men. We're talking about the franchise as a whole, comics, games, cartoons, but the bulk of this conversation is going to be the movie universe, the TV shows. So there's a lot to chomp down on that topic.
Yep.
So you have two very different X-Men fans with you right now. And I think Ian, it's safe to say that we're fairly universal when it comes to the video games.
Oh yeah.
But you are a big fan of the comics. I am not. Although I am a fan of comics, but I'm not a big fan. In fact, last time I started collecting comics again, I went in and talked to the guy and introduced me to comics. I'd only been reading The Walking Dead at the time, but I wanted to get back into some Marvel comics and such. And I specifically said, I don't want any of that melodramatic X-Men crap. That's the actual words that came out of my mouth, which was funny because he was, at that point, he's like, oh, well, that makes this a bit harder. I'm like, I figured it would. So, but you're a fan of the X-Men comics. I'm not a big fan of them. Let's see. I think for the cartoon, there's really only going to be one that stands out, as well as there should only be one that stands out. But I think when it comes to the the X-Men cinematic universe, and for the nerds, that's Marvel Universe 10005. They actually numbered that one. I was a little surprised when I was doing research on it. It's got its own universe number. I'm going to try to be nice, people. I'm going to try to be nice. And in some areas I will be. There are some genuine things to appreciate and enjoy about these movies. There are a few things. There's a lot not to as well, but hey, we're gonna try to turn that frown upside down and talk about some good stuff. But okay, so let's start with the comics. Obviously, this is when it comes to the X-Men, their name as a comic book is one of the names. It's one of the most well-known, one of the most renowned names, groundbreaking in its time, and has always been wildly popular.
Oh yeah, with the comics though. Here's my issue, and this drew me away from X-Men later. Now, I'll say this caveat: the earlier comics, Uncanny X-Men, everything like that, they tend to focus on X-Men as a team and as a whole. That's where I thought it was strongest. However, the comics dispersed a lot. The further you got into these stories, the more you had individual character plots that, well, usually ended up calling for their own stories at the end. So you had book after book. Wolverine was a natural extension. Of course, he had his own comic. We've seen. Just like today, we have a lot of single Wolverine movies. But later on, that broke into offshoots for Gambit. It broke into offshoots for Cable, which is, oh my god, all over the place with the whole future time traveling and all the references. And then one we'll hit on later as well, here's even Legion. So many characters ended up picking up these side stories to the point where, even as a fan, early on, especially coming in the mid-'90s, I couldn't keep up with them. It really just became a select few. The ones that I enjoyed. I think I ended up following the mainline X-Men and Wolverine, and that was about all.
I think it would be hard. Excuse me. I think it would be hard for myself to judge. When I was a big comic fan of the '90s, half the shelf was X-Men titles. To which I only read one near the end of the comic boom. I got into the from the Age of Apocalypse storyline. I got into the X-Man comic.
Yeah.
That one was fairly interesting, but also short-lived. But they were hugely popular. The X-Men, I think, would have a lot to do with the success and the downfall of the comic boom of the '90s.
Yeah.
It would be hard to say, though, when they were more popular. If they were more popular in the '90s or in the '60s. I think that's kind of hard for me to judge. We'd have to get somebody on here, I think, that was in the comics during both eras to really know. The sales would be impossible to look at considering the time frames. Just out of sheer difference of population. And what was sold then and what wasn't. So, but I mean, reading about the history of comic books, the X-Men is what really, it's my understanding, along with a couple other titles, but the X-Men really launched things. That's when things really started to cook, is my understanding. Back in the 60s is when the X-Men came out. I agree. Going to the comic store every week, seeing a new title pop up for the X-Men. Well, look, Rogue has their own series now, and
Right.
so does Bishop, and so does like you said, Gambit, and so does this person. Hey, look, Cyclops has his own now. Some of them were intentional miniseries, some of them weren't. This was back when Marvel was having problems and throwing everything at the wall, trying to see what would stick. Which inevitably almost none of them, well, actually none of them did. The X-Men proper titles were the only ones that stuck around. Wolverine, but
Yeah.
Wolverine as an X-Men almost doesn't get counted, though. Well, and that's not to say he's not an X-Men. He is through and through. But I mean, he didn't even start in an X-Men title. He started in the Hulk title. So, he's got different roots than the others.
And along with those roots, too, I think you got to look at what these were supported by. I think one thing that, to the credit of a point going for the early '90s X-Men cartoons or comics rather, they were supported by the Fox's animated series. I mean, the X-Men animated series, golly, I mean that every Saturday morning, maybe they aired some more. I know I watched it a lot, but
that theme is in my head right now.
Yeah, I could go on, but I won't, because that'd be a bad idea.
No, you shouldn't.
But
especially because you had it wrong.
No, dude, that was the start of it. Are you drunk? Are you drunk?
Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to plug the theme into this show, and they can
do it
for this stuff.
Do it. Do it.
But you almost like bring it, do it.
Yeah, right. Go for it. But no.
Okay, but yeah, no. You're talking about show though. It was a fantastic cartoon.
Yeah, it was, and this even had a comic line. It was just a couple of volumes.
Oh, that's right.
It was like 90 between like 92 and 96. I think these range, but that's really important to highlight that you had a series that was so popular. They created additional stories, or more like retold stories, from the animated series and put that in comic form.
They weren't afraid. What was important, I think, about that cartoon, and not that they were groundbreaking, but I think they did it better than anyone else at the time, is they weren't afraid to be in a more adult kind of cartoon.
Right.
They didn't dumb things down for their audience. And that was pretty important. I think that launched a new wave of cartoons at the time, including from their own department. Again, with Spider-Man, very similar take on it, where this wasn't a teenage Spider-Man that you had in the cartoon. It was an adult Spider-Man in college dealing with things. But the X-Men really launched that. Outside of the fact that the animation was definitely a step above what you saw for most, but their storylines and the way it was written as a whole, again, not the most complicated stuff, but it was definitely a step above where most cartoons were.
Definitely, and I think the thing that made it really potent, it did a good job of doing something Star Trek did even. It had a way in really simple form of just touching on social ills.
Show, sir.
It is, but no. But the parallel. Listen, no, the parallels are the same. I can't discount that. The way X-Men was able to hit social ills, I thought rock in a cool way. It didn't make some elaborate, commentary or something else. It just showed it for what it is, and like you could relate that to something real world pretty easily.
Well,
Uh,
that is at the core of the X-Men.
Absolutely.
Is dealing with those social issues. That has always been there. I think the only place that you don't find that is in the video games, where there's not really much of a place for it. Uh, that's all about hitting buttons and blowing up people, not so much about dealing with the social norms and what is not a social norm.
Yeah, and careful, I'm gonna get PTSD again from dealing with that the Sega game. I never beat that. Oh man.
But yeah, there was other cartoons, many of which were launched around the era of the first couple movies that came out. I think one of them was Wolverine and the X-Men. I think was the one that hit fairly big.
Right.
That one actually introduced the X-23 in there at some point. I saw a handful of those. I had a friend of mine who was big into that. I wasn't a fan of how everyone else were basically kids, and Wolverine was some kind of weird anti-social teacher guy, and I really liked the '90s show for what I said before, which was fairly groundbreaking. But at the same time, it didn't favor Wolverine, who even at that point was still a clear favorite. Everyone had plenty of stuff going on, plenty of stories. They weren't afraid to tackle complicated stories or social issues. It was great. I think it goes down. Definitely deserves to go down as one of the best cartoons ever. I think.
Yeah.
Watching some of it in prep for the show, the animation. It's still pretty good. It doesn't quite stand up to time, but at the same time, it was really great. It was really groundbreaking animation at the time. It wasn't the smoothest, but they really pushed the envelope as far as detail in a cartoon. It was great. I'm just kind of stopping on the topic.
I mean, hey, dude, don't worry about it. I mean, everybody gets sipping pina coladas and rose-colored glasses when you start talking about the animated series. Hey, I still got the collector's VHS.
Wow,
the whole thing.
The VHS. Do you even have anything to play that on?
Let me dig out the Betamax and the decks, and no, I mean, honestly, man, there's a VHS rusting somewhere up in the attic. That's about all I got. Here's the real thing though. Would I play it? No. In fact, I still think my box set's sealed. I had some of like the originals, like the one-offs, like that had like 3 or 4 episodes on them. I had a bunch of those. Like those are the ones I watched. But I remember I got like a box set way back, collectors, like just to have that.
Nice.
Well,
so we talked a little bit about the games, though. I don't have much to say about the games. In our last big topic, we talking about arcades and such.
Yeah.
For me, there was one game, and that was the arcade game, X-Men, the arcade game. That's what it was called. That thing was fantastic.
Heck yeah.
Classic.
Oh yeah.
Again, deserves to be in the realm of forever one of the best arcade games that came out. Just a great game, great co-op game and action game in general.
I think I'm pretty sure I always pick Colossus just because his special was always that. Oh, that was hype. But
But did you ever play any other games? You were saying something about a Sega Genesis one.
Yeah, man. So this one really goes back for me. A couple of the X-Men games I played extensively. There were 2. There was one on Super Nintendo and one on Genesis. I'd like to take second focus on. I want to look at the one on Super Nintendo first because that's actually the one that pops in my mind lovingly when I think about these. This was called X-Men Mutant Apocalypse, and to my knowledge, this was one of the. There could have been more. Maybe I'm just misreading this, but this is one of the only ones that Capcom actually picked up and published. There's another cool thing about the series X-Men games I want to comment about. They were never anchored to one specific publisher, which I think gave them incredible flexibility. You had, of course, a lot of different X-Men games coming out, like 95, X-Men Clone Wars. You had the Sega Genesis game I'm talking about in 93, which is called X-Men. You had Children of the Atom in 94. But none of these were necessarily bolted down, and I think each X-Men game you got to try out kind of gave it a different flavor. I really liked Mutant Apocalypse because when you did your playthrough, it wasn't as interchangeable as the arcade, right? Like you couldn't just do like, I'll be Colossus here, or Wolverine here, or Cyclops here. each stage you did, you played as someone different. So there would be like a Psylocke stage, and there would be like a Gambit stage, and there would be like a Cyclops stage, and everything else. And you kind of pick where you started and where you went for your route. But for an earlier 16-bit game, it had a route that you went through, like a path and everything. And actually, the music was fun for the time. I thought it flowed pretty good, like for the animations and everything else. It was just a fun game. Never beat it. Made it pretty far, if I remember right. I think it was a Psylocke stage I always got screwed over on, but good game. Again, another one I never owned either, but I used to rent this one from Blockbuster all the time.
Cool.
And then
what was the Clone Wars game?
I'm trying to recall here, because this was actually one that I had a couple friends that owned, but I never actually owned this one. I can't tell you anything about the plot, but I know this was Sega only. And I think this was the sequel actually to the original X-Men game, the one I'm actually going to talk about in a moment.
Okay.
It was actually called X-Men 2, the Clone Wars. But you had a pretty wide selection of characters. I think there was at least like 6 or 7. I believe you were able to play as Magneto in this one too, or at least he was like a hidden unlockable. But what made these, and I'd like to highlight this one along with the first X-Men on Genesis, these were just fun platformers. This was during a time where I was coming up playing side-scrolling beat-em-ups like Streets of Rage, Final Fight, but also a lot of fun platformers like, of course, the Sonic the Hedgehog series. And this sort of went along that platformer line, just minus the high speed. You know, I think you had some of the action you would in like a beat-em-up game, but it had like a few like light puzzles to it, a lot of platforming, jumping stuff like that. So if you were more towards like the jumping, exploring, like just a little bit more, a little less hack and slash, you probably would have enjoyed this one more. If you were more for like the beat 'em up style, I think the ones at Super Nintendo were more worth checking out.
Cool. All right. I think this was a few years ago. There was also a failed kind of a MMO kind of X-Men game.
Oh yeah.
That was very missed, is my understanding. They actually tanked the company that made it. I can't remember the name of it at the time, but they put so much into it. It took so long for him to come out with it, and then it just wasn't very good. I think outside of the '90s, which obviously the X-Men had a huge run with everything. I don't think there's been much as far as games go.
No, and not even as much in recent times. I mean, heck, one of the last ones I remember was in early 2000s. They had the X-Men movie official game. You know how those go.
Mm-hmm.
So
you don't even count those.
Yeah, you don't. I don't even. No, let's not.
So overall, let's talk. Talking about the '90s, be it the comics, be it the video games, be it the cartoon. Who was your favorite X-Men?
Man, here's the deal.
You can pick out of any of those.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna have to. I'll break down the categories then. I'd have to say, I'll say comic and game, because those were two of the things I looked at the most. I was that kid that started off like, as soon as I saw him like in the animated series and everything, I'm like, Wolverine, yeah, and then Gambit, and I'm like, whoa, hold up. Just his power set, sort of had a mysterious past at the start that we learned more about later. Dude was smooth. That's the best thing I can describe about him. So yeah, I'm a Gambit fan.
Gambit. All right, I'm not overly surprised by that. I'm not all that surprised. So, what do you think my favorite was? Talking about that year, that era, and in those genres.
Cable.
Okay, first of all, you're sneaky because I said earlier Cable was one of my favorites, but you're wrong. You're wrong. He wasn't my favorite out of that era, out of that genre. Take another guess. You can't use that one because I said that earlier. That doesn't count.
You won't even let me cheat. Okay, fine. If we were to pull out of the original early X-Men, Havoc.
No. Again, you're close. You're close on both. Because they're family members, Cyclops.
Good old Cyclops. Classic Blue.
I was a big Cyclops fan. That eye lasers, pew pew, so deadly, So, and I mean, the guy at any time realistically could just demolish anyone at any given moment, and I
True.
appreciated the fact that the character obviously had a lot of restraint and control, and was a leader of the group.
He did. There were a couple of times when we got a flash of just how ridiculous Cyclops was when he just cut loose. When someone really took him there, pushed him to the edge. I remember Sinister. He let loose on him, and he pretty much ended that arc when he did.
Yeah, no,
Like
he could end any arc. At any time,
yeah,
really
yeah,
wanted.
he could. He could. He was
Well,
a
in fact, he kind of does that in the later years here for the comics. I know he ends up getting imbued with the Phoenix power and becomes quite the badass and
whoa,
kills Professor X. So,
whoa, man. See,
oh,
now
you
that,
didn't know about that?
no, man. That one I skipped over.
Yeah, no, he's quite the bad guy for quite a while, up until I think the recent redoing of the Marvel Universe.
Wow.
He's like one of the deadliest guys in the Marvel Universe for quite a while. Yeah, he has enough of it, and he basically starts getting the same mentality as Magneto, except for he's got the power to back that shit up. Instead of just moving around pennies and quarters, he just starts blowing
I,
the shit out of everyone.
I can see it. You know, one cool draw about Cyclops was that he dealt with the stressors and everything else that a bunch of other heroes do, but he wasn't. I never felt he was just super altruistic or just so straight laced like Captain America or something, right? Like with Cyclops, it always felt he had a breaking point. He had a reasonable breaking point, and he wouldn't true to character. Just be a goody two shoes about everything, just ignore everything that happened, just keep glazing over it. No, he'd do something about it, and he'd come to the end of his rope.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, there we go to an era where they treated that man with respect, to an era in a genre where they punked him out like a little bitch. Let's talk about the movies. That actually really upset. When it came down to the first the first three movies, the first trilogy for the X-Men movies, that was my biggest complaint. Where's my Cyclops action?
yeah, yeah,
I mean, the first. Okay, so it needs to be said. The first movie, I think, came out in '99 or 2000, is a very important movie for comic book movies as a whole. It was right around that time that you had two comic book movies that did really well, that reawoke, I think, overall the genre and showed interest for the movie industry to continue on with this genre, the superhero
right.
genre. You had X-Men, which was obviously the bigger of the two, and then you also had Blade. Which someday we'll talk about Blade, how I do give huge amounts of credit to the original Blade movie for where comic book movies are,
Right.
where a lot of special effects are today. But we'll talk about that another time. The original X-Men movie, though, 1999, or either that or developed in 1999, came out in 2000, one or the other.
Yeah.
That was huge. That was huge because, I mean, up until that point, comic book movies were a lot. They weren't so grounded. Now you watch the movie now, and it doesn't seem this way. But back then, that was a very grounded in reality movie.
Yeah.
For comic books, whereas at the time it was like you had the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, and you had the Batman movies, which again were stylistically great, at least the first two. But definitely veered off course from that. So you did have some good ones, but they weren't as realistic,
Right.
as what you got with the first X-Men movie. What did you think of it overall? So again, we're only looking at the first movie by itself.
Sure. Yeah. Diving into this, I made a comment earlier when we began the segment, just saying my overall feelings about the live actions. But just starting here, I was overjoyed to see this. I remember when this was announced. And of course, I instantly thought back to the earlier '90s, not only the games I played and like the animations and everything, but I've always loved this group of characters. I always liked them, and seeing what that was going to be like in live action, I thought it was pretty darn appealing. Movie itself, I enjoyed it. You even had some, I think, a lot of moments, of course, focused around Wolverine. If I recall, this was the one where Wolverine ended up donating a portion of his healing factor for Rogue by the end, right?
Well, she steals his powers.
She
uses his. Oh wait, no. Was that this one? Oh, jeez.
I could have sworn it was. I know we're
Yeah, it was. It was.
Okay. I was about to say, I hope we don't derp it, but no.
Yeah. It was in one of the first two, but I'm 99% sure it was the first one where she gets injured and uses his healing factor.
Exactly. Hey, I enjoyed it. You also had, I think, an appearance from some characters that didn't always get a lot of press time, especially Mystique. Naturally, Mystique would become a character that we're going to see all throughout these films, but it was a great spot, I think, to anchor all these characters and to sort of establish where they stood, personality-wise, what a lot of their goals were, and that's something that I think that was going to remain consistent going forward and for the rest of the film. So a good grounding film, a superhero movie around the time I think we needed one. We needed some extra content out there, and I liked it.
Actually, and I have to correct myself. I think, gosh, and hopefully I'm not wrong about this again. I believe Rogue steals Wolverine's healing factor at the end of the movie so that she can survive that circular thingy that she's in that Magneto's
right.
Yeah, right. And that messes him up, which obviously he gets his healing power back, which we can't say so much for the next movie that's coming out. But yeah, I think you said the most important thing outside of the fact that and we're coming out of the 90s at this point. We're coming out of this great cartoon and comic book era for the X-Men, and they launched it. I think they launched it really well. I think the most important thing you said was the groundwork that was laid for this universe was perfect at the time. I don't think they could have done it much better at the time. They introduced a lot of great, colorful characters. They all had the right look, which again was something people were always concerned about when it came to Wolverine. Yeah. Even though Hugh Jackman's like a good foot and a half taller than what Wolverine's supposed to be in the comics, but I think he's like 6. I think he's around my height. I think he's like 5'6" or 5'7". Or I'm sorry, 6'6", 6'7". Mm-hmm. Where Wolverine's supposed to be like, wasn't he supposed to be a solid 5'3" or something like that?
Yeah, dude. Dude's short. Guy. Yeah.
But they got the look right. The style was different than what we'd ever seen him before, but at the same time, that was right. They had great actors in all of it. So many perfect actors for those roles.
Definitely
launched a couple careers. Halle Berry's career.
Yep.
I say launching career, and then I can't remember the name of the actress who played Mystique. But she was a model before that. Do you remember it?
It was I think it was. Her last name was like something two-part, but I know it was like Rebecca Stramos.
Yeah, Rebecca Romijn now at this point.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, Romijn Stamos at the time. Launched her career. Again, I can't remember the actor's name who played Cyclops, but he went on to some moderate success in other comic book movies. And of course, Hugh Jackman, who had done some other things, but that really launched his career. Patrick Stewart obviously branched out from this. Everyone and everything started out really well here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't stay that way though. But
no.
It started out really well. And then you have to go into a couple of years later, and in my opinion, one of my favorite X-Men movie, which was X2.
Mm.
And I think they did a really good job here. I mean, this was a great continuation. Again, branching out some great new characters, taking existing characters and existing storylines and doing a solid job with them. Of course, the main story arc for this was Wolverine's history, especially with Stryker, and when it comes to the Weapon X, tipping, putting their toe into that water a little bit.
Right.
I think they did a really good job with X2. Some say it is the best of the movies. I do have the extended version of that somewhere on DVD, which did add a fair amount more into it. Didn't really change the movie at all. Not that it needed it. The X2 was great as well.
Yeah, this one thing I really dug about X2 is it highlighted a group that I always thought was pretty awesome in the comics. That's the Brotherhood. This one opened with some characters that we knew but hadn't seen as much before. We had the opening with Nightcrawler. But yeah, man, I always thought the Brotherhood was really interesting because it was sort of like Magneto's anti-group. You had Xavier in one hand with the X-Men, but then Magneto founded the Brotherhood, who really went more towards his ideals of, okay, look, there has to be a separation here. Mutants are obviously superior. We need our own society. and the two groups clashed a lot. You even saw portions of the Brotherhood in X-Men Arcade. There have been various members affiliations with it over time. Like you've had like the Blob, Pyro, others like that. And other times it changed, but it always felt like this like rebel element to it that I thought added a really good contrast to what we already knew about Xavier and the X-Men, and they made a pretty good statement in this movie too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I mean, out of those two, which one sits better for you?
Man, again, just for how foundational it was, I'm still leaning a bit on one.
Yeah.
Two did have some great hype, some really good excitement. I love how they introduced, like I said, a lot of additional characters in the Brotherhood. But what can I say? I can't argue with the OG. So.
All right, fair enough. I think I would actually lean on 2 a little bit more. Especially at the time, they're breaking new ground with this stuff. No one had done a movie like this, like the first X-Men, and then to actually build off of it and do it well and expand appropriately with it. I think out of the 2 X-Men 2 or X2 as it's called, I think it was my favorite of the 2. All right, so there's that, and then
it deserves every bit of pause you're giving it, every bit.
And then comes X-Men Apocalypse, and what an apocalypse it was. So it needs to be noted that this is when the first 2's director, Bryan Singer, exits off of this to do no better himself with the Return of Superman. He goes to make that and does no better, but whew, this was bad.
Yeah,
and there was no. See, I don't come from a fanboy perspective on this. I come as in general a fan of comic book movies, and comic books in general, and the style and the art, and watching it be put into a live action form and enjoying how that's done. This was horrible, though.
Yeah. I do want to back up a quick step. If you're mentioning X-Men Apocalypse, there's another before this that was also a catastrophe in my opinion. I really didn't like.
Isn't that the name of X3 though?
Isn't it? I think you're thinking Last Stand.
I am thinking Last Stand. You're right. I'm sorry.
All good.
I'm sorry. I revoked my nerd.
Hey, one catastrophe at a time. It's all right.
No, X-Men 3 Last Stand. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Meant everything I said, just had the title wrong. I remember watching this, and they did a couple things decent. Juggernaut was cool.
Yep.
Beast, done well. Perfectly picked actor for that. Kelsey Grammer was great. Trying to think of what else I could say was good about it. We did get to see a bit of a more savage Wolverine.
Yes, we did.
Which we got a hint about before, but we really got to see some savage action from Wolverine. I do think that is it.
Hey, I mean, this was the best treatment Cyclops ever got, if I recall, right?
No. What? You've got to be razzing me. You have to.
No. I'm trolling you hard.
He dies in like the first 15
minutes. That was so dumb. It's
so wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
I get it. Wolverine's that's the thing. Wolverine's the guy, but part of what makes Wolverine the guy in the X-Men is that he's not the guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's the,
right.
He's the guy behind the scenes. That's the guy. That's how he's the man. No, but to put him in the front like that was just stupid.
Yeah.
That's the guy in the front that the fans choose is the most important, not the one that they push in front of you like that. And that's the way it's always been. That's right. As far as I can remember. This didn't have a good story. And then, so you had the whole. It was really just a big mess because there was 2 major storylines going on, which intertwined in ways that were stupid. You had the whole Phoenix saga, which was slaughtered.
Yeah.
Slaughtered. It don't even no. And you're going to know that a lot more than I am, but I know enough about the Phoenix Saga to know that they fucked that up royally.
Yeah. Badly.
But then you also had the whole thing with the cure, the mutant cure.
Right.
Um, and I would have to actually say, out of the storylines in the movie, the mutant cure was the better of the two, and lended itself better to the movie, dealing with the issues. Rogue actually takes the cure.
Right.
This isn't, and I thought that was provocative, especially because, and for this at this point the trilogy, that was an arc in the whole overall trilogy is Rogue dealing. This is how we're introduced to the X-Men world overall, is through Rogue and dealing with the fact that she's a mutant, and for her to kind of wuss out at the end, especially because she's one hell of a powerful mutant at that.
Yeah. And considering too, we talked a lot about the whole groundwork that got laid, not earlier on, not just with character personalities, but establishing who they were as a team as well. And it sort of feels like a lot of that went out the window. I think that's in part, though. You mentioned this too, about the talent switch. Really, this movie was on 3 directors by the time it actually hit.
Oh, that's right. There was one in between.
Yeah. You had, of course, as you said, Singer, that left do Superman, who was replaced by Matthew Vaughn, who ended up leaving fairly early on, who got replaced at the end of all that by Ratner, and it launched. Here's what's crazy. This was the X-Men film that had the highest budget out of the original 3 at the start. I mean, again, went really whole hog in effects and everything, but man, as you said, these two giant elements of the stories kind of met each other's. Like, Phoenix is like, hey, what's up? And, oh, okay. And they just kind of turned the other way and just never melded with each other. Just rough. Axed a number of characters, out of Continuum. Again, with Phoenix, who's just weird, kicking right off with Dark Phoenix, just having Genius become, Satan and everything else. So
no explanation, if I remember too. Zero explanation as to, oh wait, no, that's right. It wasn't that like something that was always in her or something, which is kind of comes out of the comic, but not really.
Right. It was the idea about this higher awakening in her, which kind of strays away again from the whole divine sense of the comic.
You're missing a whole huge element to that
from
the origins of the story. The actual origins of the story is to the whole Phoenix saga. The truth of it is that everybody wanted the Phoenix saga. Everybody wanted, and they laid down some groundwork for it. They didn't have to go with it in X3, but they did. But I mean, for God's sakes, the Phoenix Saga could have been its own damn trilogy
easily.
If they, and I get it, there was definitely pressure to do it. But if they would have done a different X-Men 3 and established some more characters and established not just the end of this trilogy, but the beginning of a Phoenix trilogy, I think would have been the best way to go in hindsight. Of course, I am definitely Monday morning quarterbacking that shit. But I think that would have been the way to go.
Yeah. It deserves its own exploration. Marvel, the coolest thing about its overall universe is you have a lot of really ridiculous, like, cosmic level entities or powers. A lot of them are villains, but Phoenix it was a really special case with that. And, to have, like, a super high level, like, AA manifestation like that, it needed its own treatment.
So it's something that we didn't remark about in the first 2 movies, which I think needs to be said, because it definitely changes gears here in the third one. The villains, the main villains, definitely the main villain in the first one being Magneto and his Brotherhood, and also in the second one, then with also they had Stryker and his whole thing, which was another group of villains. It needs to be noted that something that these movies did, which you don't, even nowadays, you don't see too well, or too often, I should say. Definitely an exploration of compassion for the villain, or at least understanding their perspective. You don't see that a lot. That has always been something that's been around in the comics as well. I think that definitely needs to be noted, that they did a good job of that. While your bad guys were still definitely your bad guys, there was a perspective you could understand.
Right.
And in the third one, that completely derails.
Yeah. So,
big time.
And it's funny, it almost kind of mirrors the breakage you saw when you had a lot of characters getting their own individual comics later on. You started off with a lot of cohesion, and then things kind of fragment. So naturally, with this third movie, this is where I really mark the fragmentation point, and I think that's good and bad. This is what opens room for the Wolverine movies that we're going to see, going on the years. X-Men Origins, of course, going into First Class, the Wolverine 2013 film, really, really delving into his older origins and his trip into Japan. And of course, later on the rest of the TV series and everything else we're going to see. But I like to dub this as the going on from here, the Age of Wolverine for a bit.
This was definitely a shattering point, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Not in a good way. Not in a branch, not a branching off so much as we're expanding this universe, but we're going to pick up the pieces and do what we can with this kind of way. X-Men 3 was bad. It was half-hearted. You could tell at the time. Just didn't flow well. Didn't work well with the two stories they were saying. Very similar to what I think Spider-Man 3 around the same era.
Yeah.
Where you had them trying to give fan service while at the same time the directors and the writers obviously had a story that they wanted to tell as well.
Right.
You don't see that kind of division in these movies much anymore, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it again at some point.
Right.
But yeah, it was kind of funny because they did make kind of a big deal about how they were going to branch things off from here. They told us that there was going to be this whole anthology series of X-Men Origins.
Yeah.
To which we only got one.
Yeah.
We only got the one. There was the fabled Magneto, X-Men Origins Magneto, which we never got. And they were going to start with. I think they were going to start with Magneto, and we didn't get that. And then they just did the Wolverine one. So are we leaving the original trilogy behind? Any final words on that?
I don't really have any at this point. Besides, I'm looking for picking up the pieces.
You're too nice. You're too nice.
Dude, that's already been shattered, man. I ain't got nothing else to say about that.
What did you think of X-Men Origins Wolverine then?
Now, okay, I have this really hard time getting the 2013 one, the Wolverine, mixed up with X-Men Origins Wolverine all the freaking time, and I can't keep these separate in my head for a reason. Now, if I recall, weren't there some pokes at like the rest of the experiments that were alongside Wolverine when he was Weapon X, and then the rest of the test subjects at that facility, like hints at Deadpool and like others, but
X-Men Origins Wolverine is the crappy origin story of Wolverine that completely ruins Deadpool.
Okay.
And the whole Weapon X thing, and completely retcons. Sabretooth.
Yeah.
Not very good. In fact, some think it's the worst. I don't know if it's the worst. There's a lot to choose from the worst. So let's, but not very good. And then the Wolverine is the famous story in Japan.
So was this when you were most disliked? Like out of the or what did you?
Jeez, I don't know. I think it might be. I don't. It's right there with X-Men 3. It really is. There's some really. It's just a lot of failed attempt to try to do something, which is the whole Wolverine origin. They just don't get it right.
Right.
I think we're kind of in an era now where they're thinking if they throw a lot of flash and special effects at it, that's what's going to get them through. Hugh Jackman puts in a good performance. He does his best with it. You never get past how crappy Deadpool is.
Yeah.
You never get past all the changes in Sabretooth. You never get past seeing Professor X standing there at the end next to the what was it? Was that a helicopter or some kind of plane? No, it was a plane.
Yeah.
You never get past the fact that Cyclops is obviously in his mid to late teens when you see him in this. When this is supposed to take place, this is taking place in the late 70s, early 80s.
Now, I thought there was, you're going into a little bit of the zone of X-Men First Class. Of course, there's.
Oh Jesus!
It's funny because this is the one that a lot of fans hail as, hey, here's our bounce back. All right, here's the origin story that we were promised.
Are we going into First Class? We're just going to leave Origins there? You're not going to say anything more about it?
Well, I kind of consider him part of a similar line, but not about the Wolverine one specifically. I'm out of ammo on that one, man. Like I said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish the topic of X-Men Origins Wolverine by
Sure.
saying it sucked. It was horrible. In fact, in later movies, it was the timeline was changed so drastically. You never need to see this movie, and you never should.
Simple enough.
So I mean that.
Yeah.
But okay, so yeah. First, so after several years of the last two movies having been so bad, we actually, some people don't even think we're going to get another X-Men movie. Some people think that's it.
Yep.
Then, yeah, I'm sorry. Now go ahead. Then you get X-Men First Class,
which is a really cool nod to early on X-Men Origins, man. This took me back to the comic days of Wolverine in that brown and yellow suit. Like Cyclops and the whole awkward skull cap with like single visor, all that good stuff. This one, I thought this one was a really solid hit, man. It based, you still had that whole X-Men reality base, and that we had that happen in the first one. I kind of felt we rebased it, though. We kind of took things back a little bit more to the past, kind of restructured the whole architecture of everything and how that worked. But I thought they pulled it off well. They sort of restructured and built on some existing lines that we knew were going to happen again later, but really went back and said, this is why this is the way this is. And I enjoyed it.
I actually agree. I really liked X-Men First Class. I think as a standalone film, it's fantastic.
Yep.
I liked the direction this was taking things in. You have at this point, you have an intentional mishmash of older X-Men stuff with some newer X-Men stuff. Things are definitely a bit out of place at this point, but it's fine because it works.
Yeah.
And this is an example of taking elements of the source material and using them in different ways correctly.
Right.
And I thought they did a really good job with it. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And again, I think standalone, if that would have been it, I think that would have been cool. Okay. But yeah. I enjoyed First Class, definitely.
Cool. And that led us, I think, right into Wolverine, the solo movie, and it was.
No, I don't think so.
Well, if you're thinking,
you're right. No, you're right.
Yeah,
we had the Wolverine next.
We had there was a weird break because you would have thought Days of Future Past was next, but you had the solo Wolverine film that was in the middle of these two movies.
Right.
That's sort of.
That's right, because the end credit scene, wasn't that with Wolverine?
Right.
And you had Professor X and you had Magneto there, and that goes in Days. You have that end credit scene was at the end of the Wolverine, which led into
Days of Future Past. That's right.
What'd you think of the Wolverine?
Let's see. This was the one. Silver Samurai was the big villain.
Yeah, this is the famous story of Wolverine in Japan and dealing with Silver Samurai and what's her name that can tell the future. I'm sorry, people. Yeah. I don't remember her name.
It was all right. Like the whole deal about finding out exactly, why he was after adamantium and all that. If anything, that's the part that pretty much kept me around just to see. And of course, the very ending, post credits. But I don't pan this one as hard as X-Men 3 or Origins, but in the same hand, I really didn't enjoy this one as much as First Class.
No. Well, no. I think First Class needs to be looked at by itself too.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how it was written. It was almost like, well, we have this license, we have this X-Men license, and we don't want to just lose it. So let's just do something with it. And they came out with a hit. I like the Wolverine. I enjoyed it. It continues on with the story a little bit. And Wolverine's obviously having some issues with what happened in X3,
right.
X-Men 3, dealing with Jean dying and stuff like that. They touch on it a little bit, but not too much. Give it just enough of the drive that we need to understand where Wolverine is at this point.
Right.
I thought it did really well. I thought it's, and again, I don't know this whole story arc too well from the comics. It's my understanding it's the Wolverine story, when he was in Japan. But I think for what I heard, that there are definitely some times when they veer off of that story, but for the most part they do it justice.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's fair.
Okay, I thought it was really good. I enjoyed it. That's
cool.
I'm sorry. I'm not bad mouthing this one. You have to wait. Don't worry. There's more bad mouthing coming up.
Oh yeah. But not. I'd be surprised if you took a lot of issue with Days of Future Past.
Yeah, I do.
Really?
I do take a lot of issue with Days of
Really?
Future Past. It is the movie that never should have happened.
Go for it.
So here you have it. Because at this point, you got to remember where things are and where people are looking at things at this point. You have the Wolverine, which has nothing to do with the original days of the X-Men and the X-Men First Class. Has nothing to do with it, and rightfully so. So you still have the Wolverine going and doing his movies. But then you have X-Men First Class, and they've established something really nice and really cool here. And they should continue in that direction.
Yeah.
There was no reason to mash these motherfuckers up. There was no. Well, I take that because there was good reason. There was a possibility of being able to pull a Days of Future Past storyline out of this,
right?
But they didn't do it right. They mixed it all up, which then goes into greater issues for the next movie, the last movie. They just no the whole future sequence, that was pretty cool. That was interesting to see that.
Right.
That was fun, but this movie's a mess, and like I said, they mashed the old timeline with the new timeline, and it doesn't work well.
Yeah,
because now you bring up all these questions. Okay, so this is especially at the end. And or am I getting that mixed up? No, I'm not getting that mixed up.
No, you're not. You're not.
The end where you now have the Utopia timeline. Basically, everything's perfect at the end.
Reset.
Yeah, but why? Why reset it? Because they're obviously putting a nice ending to this long story that they started back in '99. That's obviously an ending to that. You're not going to use gray-haired Wolverine again. You're not going to, with the gray patches, you're not going to get all these guys together to do these X-Men movies again. It's not going to happen. Right. So why even reset it? You should have just left X-Men First Class to continue on the story.
Yeah.
Especially because at that point you've created an X-Men universe that has enough freedom from the origin, from the source material, to where you can do a lot of crazy stuff as long as you do it well again. It didn't, and again, this is not me coming as a hardcore X-Men fan, and I know they probably feel a lot differently. So I'm coming from that perspective of a fan of the comic book genre who understands what's going on enough. Say, you know what? You bombed on X-Men 3 so badly, but you recovered so well.
Yeah,
with First Class, and you're doing a much better job with Wolverine. You could continue on with these two series for a long time.
Fair enough.
That's my feeling on it.
I gotcha. The way I always stood with the reset, and I think that's valid. The mashing of said universes and the harm it can do. I saw the reset.
They almost couldn't help themselves. I think.
No,
where it was.
They couldn't. See, this was my thing. As much as they flirted with the past timelines and everything else, and kept it, if they wanted to put the axe on that, I think that's something that would have been done a little earlier on and left there. But the fact that they kept leaving doors partially cracked open, possibly, it sort of begged to say this is going to happen at some point, or there's going to be some kind of merging of these. To me, I thought the reset was presented a hope. Okay, I thought it presented an opportunity for the series. Not as much as, hey, I want to see another X-Men 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. But at the very least, all the mess and the Phoenix disaster and like everything else, that's just kind of, it's like, all right, that's aside. Now you take what you have from here and you move forward. I think the trouble is the pace is what they did after that. Of course, they ran right into Apocalypse, but that's
right. So, I mean, here's the thing. here's the thing. So, in the Wolverine, probably the only thing I didn't like about the Wolverine was the fact that the Wolverine loses his adamantium claws at the end.
right.
And then in Days of Future Past, he has him back.
Right.
No explanation.
Yeah.
Professor Xavier's back. No explanation. These are not bad things. I like that Wolverine had his claws. I like that Professor X is back. Rogue is a mutant again. No explanation.
Right.
Cyclops is around again. No explanation. Jean Grey is around again. No explanation.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. You're fixing mistakes, but that's the whole point. That's part of the whole point of this movie. But you're just here's this stuff. What? What? And then to do that, to basically put a finale on, well, and they not really, but they kind of do. When you look at the arc of the second trilogy, to put a finale on this great new past story.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm messing up words.
Good. I'm with you.
With First Class.
Right.
To take these things, match them all together, but to leave so many it's like they created all these horrible continuity errors.
Yeah.
To do this, and then they leave it at the end, which would have been a nice happy ending, but then they don't leave it. And they do nothing but make more continuity errors. There's so many problems.
Yeah.
Look, and you almost have to look at this one as a standalone as well, which is kind of funny because at the same time, you can't possibly understand a lot of what's going on in Days of Future Past unless you've seen the previous movies.
Right. Right.
So it's just such a clusterfuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I take issue with Days of Future Past.
Oh, hey, reasonably enough. I mean, and like I said, from where you go into that with Apocalypse, which was aptly named, because this really did feel like another Apocalypse for the...
It was another attempt, and I will say this: Apocalypse was a much better attempt at a huge character, huge villain, a huge storyline than the Phoenix Saga. A much better attempt.
Yeah.
Nothing on the actor who played the Apocalypse. He did as good of a job as he can. The makeup for that character was a joke. He needed to look different. There's almost a case. I don't know. I wouldn't make the case, but I will make the fact that there could be a case for making that character all CG.
Yeah.
At the same time, I get it, but they went a bad way with it. So here's the thing. So we create a world now where everything, like, okay, for example, everyone's age is wrong.
Yeah.
They're all wrong. Why are, so you got so again, the premise of Apocalypse is fine enough. And in fact, the new actors for these roles, for Cyclops and Jean and all of these, they're fine. The actors and actresses they get do a good job, but the ages are all fucked up now. And even then, in X-Men First Class, the actors that they get for McAvoy and what's the other guy's name? Plays Magneto.
Oh, shoot! This guy played in Assassin's Creed too.
Yeah, he was in Assassin's Creed. Right, you think about that while I bitch. I'll try to figure that out. Can you look that up while I'm bitching?
I got you.
Okay. So the ages on those are completely off at this point when they start those characters off of First Class, but that's okay because you're building a new foundation here at this point. You're building new story arcs and you're starting off at a new point. So it's okay that you do that. But then when you mesh them together in Days of Future Past, it gets all screwed up.
Michael Fassbender.
There you go. They are great actors, by the way. Jennifer Lawrence plays Mystique, also great actress. Although she mailed it in for Apocalypse, that's obvious. It just none of it works Now, could it have worked if they wouldn't have done Days of Future Past? Absolutely. I
Right.
think if they wouldn't have done that one, it would have worked. Especially when you have all these new characters and all these new actors, and then you throw Hugh Jackman in there
Yeah.
for some fucking reason.
Well, the whole idea was it was supposed to be, what was it? That Hugh Jackman, the one we know from the older arcs, he intersected with this timeline because he was thrown forward. He was in that like comatose state or whatever it was for X amount of time, and then when he finally comes to, he's talking to the current Xavier that we knew from the original series in the first
Right.
place. It was some really weird, trippy cable level time stuff. But anyway,
But here's the thing. I understand that Days of Future Past, look, you're trying to reset things, which is weird because then at the same time you go right back to the older timeline. So I don't understand why you're resetting everything. But I the reset and the incidents and the actions that happen in Days of Future Past, there's so many things that would not change at all from those actions
yeah,
that are just changed. Like again, everyone's older than what they should be at this point in time. It's like everything that happened to Wolverine in X-Men Origins Wolverine should have still happened. It all happened before Apocalypse, and there's nothing that would have really changed that.
right.
Maybe that's not the best excuse. Actually, no. Now that I think about that, that is not a good example. But at the same time, with Cyclops, why is Cyclops where he is? Why isn't he like he was captured by Stryker in X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Right.
He's being held captive. Why isn't that still the case? There's nothing that's happened that should have changed that.
Yeah.
And maybe some big fan can correct me on a lot of this stuff. But either way, it's a hot fucking mess. It's so I don't understand. They're almost yeah.
Which
I'm almost tired at this point.
I know, right? It's exhausting, but which sets you up. Speaking of being exhausted, which sets you up for Logan, which we're currently waiting for.
Oh no, you can't go to Logan yet.
What did I miss?
A little movie called Deadpool, sir.
okay. Hey, and you know what? Technically, I already did because if you want to be, if you want to be totally correct about this, I'm pretty sure Deadpool was before. At least I thought it was before Apocalypse.
No, Deadpool takes place in modern time.
No. I mean, not in terms of movie timeline. I'm just talking about
when it came out. Actually, I think you're right by a few months. By a few months, you're right. Deadpool came out in February, and Apocalypse came out in July. But yeah, so we have Deadpool. So okay, and I think it's important that we talk about everything that we did at this point to make a final statement overall. The continuity is a big fucking mess. Like, where the hell does Deadpool fit into all this? And one of the things that I researched pretty heavily on before entering into this topic, because we're about to go into the next couple things, which is important for this, is that where do these things stand? Where does canon and continuity stand at this point?
Yeah.
And from the producers, from the directors, from the writers, you know what I found? Not a single solid thing. Not a single solid piece. I had literally read out of articles Bryan Singer say, oh, well, they're all kind of doing their own thing at this point. Their worlds are parallel to the other major X-Men universe. And then literally 2 paragraphs later, he's saying, no, Deadpool's a part of the X-Men universe. They're all part of the same thing. And same thing with the writers will say something where it's like, well, maybe it is, and then next thing you know, well, yeah, no, it definitely is. It's definitely a part of this. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think, and honestly, this is my biggest problem with this at this point. This is my biggest problem with this. When you have the Marvel Universe, and you have, for good or for bad, you do have the DCEU trying to establish something similar as far as a structured, shared universe. X-Men's like that puzzle that your little brother or sister has that is easy as hell to put together, but is just left as a huge fucking mess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That big, bright, colorful puzzle that's like 20 pieces, but for some reason they either leave it or done. They either leave it undone or they just don't do it right. That's the X-Men universe.
Yeah. And we haven't even gotten started on Cable and Bishop a whole lot yet.
Oh my
Well,
god.
maybe a bit. I think I'm glazing over that point too much. I'm
Well,
pretty sure
and so it needs to be said though. It does need to be said because while I bring up the name, it needs to be said. I love Deadpool. It's one of my favorite movies last year. Hilarious, great standalone movie. Great, and I think out of the whole X-Men cinematic whatever the hell it is franchise, it's definitely up there in my top two.
Yeah.
I actually can't decide which one I like more, Deadpool or X2. I think it's Deadpool.
Yeah.
Where do you sit on that one?
I still go back to the originals, man. It was really between 1 and 2. As I said earlier, I aired more on the side of the original. I'm an early art guy.
Yeah, but what do you think of Deadpool? What did you think of Deadpool?
Oh, dude, it's freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like it was, as much as I feel trying to connect that to all of this, whatever this is at this point, is a little bit of a reach.
Right.
If you want to say that in a name, I think that's fine. Deadpool is more than strong enough as a film on its own to be a thing of its own. And you know what? I am perfectly fine with not trying to make some kind of weird, funky parallel connection, or is this first class-ish, or is this kind of Phoenix-ish? I don't care about any of that. Mm-hmm. Deadpool, it really feels like enough of a thing on its own that doesn't really need to be connected to X-Men as a larger whole. And I really feel that's the statement's being made kind of going forward with some of the other stuff we have in the break-offs.
Well, and I think it's important to note that if Deadpool would have been a failure, I think everybody who works or will be working in the X-Men universe would have gladly thrown it in the trash and said, no, Deadpool has nothing to do with the X-Men universe. No. But the fact that it did so well and is so popular, everyone's like, yes, Deadpool, definitely part of the X-Men universe. Can't wait to work off of that. I'm looking forward to the sequel. The Cable's kind of iffy. I worry about Cable.
Same.
But he is one of my favorite characters. They're saying that Pierce Brosnan's going to play him. He's a great actor.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard about that?
Not that Pierce is going to play him specifically. No.
So I mean, when you think Cable, you think big and bulky, right? That's not Pierce Brosnan. He's a great actor, though. That is definitely that's going to be a huge leap for him to try to pull that off. But yeah, so looking forward to that. So. Geez, I almost feel like I need to take a nap now.
It's exhaustive.
No, it really was a lot more than I thought. But now we're looking at the future. We are looking at Deadpool 2, which looks good. They are talking about another X-Men movie.
Yep.
Not actually X-Men though, but New Mutants. Gonna do a New Mutants movie. I think the latest I've heard on that is that you will see Professor Xavier in there.
Yeah.
But not a lot announced on that. I mean, what have you heard about it?
Oh man, hardly anything. My attention has mostly been on Logan, to be honest.
And of course Logan.
Yeah, and also as well as where that was in the comics, highlighted the old man Logan arc really reminded me of where I want to say Civil War, but I don't think that's quite the right context. We had a couple of other break-offs, like people remember when Spider-Man was taken over by Dr. Octopus. There was a lot of rage against that. The what was it? The Superior Spider-Man, I think is what he called himself. I align the whole thing that's happening there sort of with what you have here with Logan and the whole, of course, the introduction of X-23, a really old Xavier. Kind of like the far-flung dystopia of what all this, so I'm going to say that again, has become, by that point. So I don't know a whole lot about New Mutants. I really couldn't comment on it a whole lot at this point. Really, it's just about Logan and the shows for me.
Well, and that's funny. You talk about Logan and how Logan ties into the continuity. Here you have a situation where they actually play off the timeline a bit. They play off the timeline from Days of Future Past, which ends in the future, and they say that Logan is based off of that a few years later. Mm-hmm. they play off of the end credit scene from, I think, the end credit scene from Apocalypse, where you have the Essex Corporation
Yeah.
getting DNA of Logan's, which they use to, at least in the comics, they use to create X-23. So there you actually have two tie-ins from the last two movies. You have Patrick Stewart playing Professor X. I mean, obviously the actors playing these characters as a tie-in into the movies as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, researching this going into tonight, specifically because I had actually specifically heard Hugh Jackman in an interview say that Logan does not tie into the other movies, and I'm like, what the hell?
Huh?
How is that a thing? How is that real? Looking into it from the director of the movie Logan, who does say this definitely ties into the movie. I give up. I give up at that point. But it's not the only thing that we're getting that's like that. But let's talk about Logan before we talk about the TV shows, because I know you and I are both looking forward to talking about Legion.
Yeah.
Now I'm almost out of energy for that. But no, Logan looks really good. Logan, the trailer that came out last year, my favorite trailer of the year, really got me psyched for this movie. While it's not the old man Logan story, it definitely has vines from it. Looks really interesting. Looking forward to it. It's one of the movies I'm really looking forward to this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if anything, it's a really good tide over till the rest of the Marvel films, the rest of the Avengers group hits. I know I'm really waiting for Thor Ragnarok. Okay, that's
my gosh,
that's the next really big. But this is a really good appetizer in the meantime. The one thing I like here is that you're finally getting a chance to really take Logan and Xavier specifically, focusing their energies. And yeah, you've had these two interact a lot, even in terms of as actors, Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman. But the whole vibe I get about this film is like decay, right? And I mean, that's in both terms of Xavier and his psyche, frankly, and then Logan and his powers. And what do you do with that in the kind of world they set up? So.
I think we talked about this briefly before, maybe not, but a lot of people were theorizing that Professor X in Logan is he's already dead, but he implanted his consciousness into Logan's mind.
Whoa, that's like some Fight Club stuff.
Do you think so?
No, I don't think it's gonna go that far.
I think maybe they're intentionally trying to lead you to that conclusion, almost for it to not be true.
Right.
But there's definitely a foundation for that theory.
Oh yeah.
You don't see in any of the clips or trailers or anything, you don't see Xavier interact with anyone else but Logan.
Right. I think
there's interesting.
Yeah, there's that one scene where Logan, Xavier, and X-23 are all around that table together, right. But we only get some very brief flashes of that. So
we only see Logan interact with Xavier and vice versa so far at this point. So even if he's in another room with other people, that doesn't mean that he's necessarily really there.
Yeah, I would be surprised if that's the direction they actually pursued, though.
All the other X-Men are already dead. By the way, people, if you didn't know that in Logan, all the X-Men are dead.
Yeah, remember that nice, happy utopia? Hey.
No. One of the two of them killed them all too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Well, in Old Man Logan, that's what happens. Is that I won't go too into it to ruin that story, because that story shouldn't be ruined. But Logan is under the impression that he's killing a bunch of supervillains when he's actually killing the other X-Men. And I won't tell you why that happens or how that all comes to be, because that's pretty important. But so again, when they're pulling out parts of the story from Old Man Logan to go into this movie, a lot of people are projecting that Logan is the reason why all the X-Men are gone. We actually don't know yet for the movie, though, why that is. X-23 looks cool. I like to see that. That's definitely a nice addition. I definitely, like you said, a decay. What's the word I'm looking for here? I can't think of it. That's horrible. That's happened to me like 5 times during this show. But yeah, definitely the feel for it and everything looks really good. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good send-off for Hugh Jackman. That being said, I don't think it's
Definitely.
his last time playing Wolverine. I think we're going to get a cameo in Deadpool 2, I should say. But I think definitely for the X-Men proper series of movies and everything, I think this is his last time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But Xavier though, Xavier though gets a kind of weird, well, not weird, interesting legacy that goes forth, and that's in the term in Legion. You know, Legion is one of the last characters I expected to have anything solo, a
Yeah,
film or a
I
series
filled
or
you in. Yeah, I filled you in on this last week. I was surprised you had no idea this was
yeah,
this
I
was a
know,
thing.
I know, right? I didn't. I'm sitting here like blown away. I'm like, wait, what's premiering when?
I've known about it for the last year and a half. I
Yeah,
guess I
and yeah,
just kind of assumed
here
you
I
knew about it.
here I am, kind of like in the boat, like, oh my god, this is the thing. Yeah, here we are, Xavier's son, uh, Legion. This is super recent premiere, just the other night. In fact, I
Yep,
hope people tuned in on FX to catch it. Well worth it. What a trip. And the
literally.
way, yeah, the way this is getting set up, and this makes me smile so much. And of course, they have more freedom to do this than in a TV series. Unlike in a film, where I think things are much more open, middle, end, closed, set up, more of a linear path you're walking. This is non-linear to the extreme. Uh, as
Oh,
as far
go ahead.
as far as no, bear with me here. As far as
Yeah.
where I think how this character experiences things,
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
and
I agree
I mean
completely.
the storytelling itself is I think on where it should be to kind of march you like along that path, but you're really kind of thrown into this guy's psyche uh, up front. I mean, you open up with a montage effectively of his early life all the way through to him being this sort of sedated personality like in an asylum. You're saying, okay, well, how did things get here? And you're kind of just taking on this roller coaster of his powers, fragments of his psyche exploding, him trying to rein that in, and then the effects and consequences of that. Crazy, even to the point where characters you believe were iced, just dead, show back up again and play a very relevant role, like in his mind of all things. But that still has a huge impact in the reality of everything that's happening, and as a result, affects his power set, which is just nuts.
Well, now, and so who was it that you saw that you could have sworn was dead?
Yeah, I'm specifically referring to Lenny. Uh, this was that whole deal. I think she's played by Aubrey Plaza, and there was that whole incident with the wall incident. I'm gonna nickname it.
Well, yeah. I think she is dead.
Yeah, right. But the interesting part is later she reappears,
Right,
presumably as
right.
like another character, but like in his mind. And the one thing I really like about this is a crazy parallel to the '90s comics. There was a character, a young girl named Marcy. A very very similar concept happened. She was killed, but Legion's separate personalities were being isolated and broken off to really bring his actual personality off and give him some back rather and bring him some clarity.
Right.
However, he brings Marcy and specifically allows her to remain part of his psyche because of really the soothing effect that she's had and the impact she's had as a character for him. So that's the first thing I ended up thinking when I'm seeing that scene. I'm like,
Right.
this is a trip.
Well, let's lay some foundation here.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, if you watched this show last night and you were confused and you thought it was all over the place, you were correct. That is exactly what it was supposed to be. If you thought it was hard to follow, you're correct. It was. Um, it's been said by the series creator who is writing and directing it, and is the showrunner, who's producing it as well. That we will see, at least for this first season, the first 8 episodes, we will see this show through Legion's mind, through his perspective. If you couldn't tell if the show is taking place in the 60s, the 70s, or modern day, you are correct. That's exactly what they wanted you to see it as. So don't worry. It was all intentional. I did a lot of research on this today, looking past it. And, of course, one of the things that I also looked up was, does Legion take place in the X-Men movie universe? What do you think the answer was?
No.
It was no. Actually, it was yes.
Hmm.
And it was no. It was both. It was both, just like all the other ones, just like Logan, just like all these other movies. Um, but you're going to be able to enjoy at least this first season without it really tying into it. If you even saw a couple things that you saw in the previous movies in the sets and in the designs, you are correct, and that was intentional. They actually had props and pieces of previous movie sets in the TV show. All of this was intentional. Now, let's actually, if you can clarify this for me a little bit.
Yeah.
Legion is one of, at least this is going in the comics, is one of the most powerful mutants ever, correct?
He's pretty hacks.
Yeah, he's pretty insanely powerful. He is, and I don't remember the mother, but he is the son of Charles Xavier.
Correct.
Which, again, with the crazy ass timeline they've set up, is pretty hard to explain. Especially if this does take place in the 60s and 70s, which it doesn't. But if it did, that would be even harder to understand. They have said, the creator of the show has said, that he is still Xavier's son in this show.
Cool.
So they say that's a critical part of it. I've never read a single thing with Legion. I don't know anything other than what I've read here researching this for Legion. Legion's power, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm probably going to get this wrong. Legion's X-Men power is defined by his schizophrenia.
You're right on.
Okay. Elaborate on that a little bit. How's that work in the comic? What is the actual definition of his power?
Well, so, of course, as you mentioned, it's his schizophrenia. It's like really bad dissociative identity disorder. But each of these personas that he has in his mind has a set of superpowers themselves. So depending on which persona is the most active at the time, that's the power set that he's actually able to use. And there's a crazy amount of those.
Right.
And this can vary from telekinesis to explosions and I mean you name it.
Yeah, so he's pretty much like Apocalypse. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, I think the thing he's missing, is he never quite hit like the immortal impact scale that like Apocalypse had. I mean of course he has a lot of human-esque weaknesses, but it's funny because usually a character that has an identity crisis, it's just like a mental issue that doesn't affect their powers at all. Like it's the opposite. It's the source of this guy's power, not
Right.
anything that would hold him back. And his short run in the comics, it had a huge effect when there was that effort to separate or isolate those personalities that actually did.
And I don't think that we saw anything in the show that is defining his power set to be from that same origin. It very well could be, but they could also set it up to be something else, I think.
Right.
That's really interesting. Now, explain to me how that works. So how can he just... So let's say he develops a new personality, he then also just develops new powers?
It's like... It's as much as him... This is what gets crossed up about it. It's as much as him developing as he's absorbed some other consciousnesses too, or they tend to take a life of their own. And I think that's often the thing that, heck, I even got tangled with reading Legion. There were a few instances where you would have a character that really didn't feel like it was just conjured by him. There was an external influence, like a reason why this is why he was affected this way, or this is why he might be more inclined, towards said power set.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a trip, man.
Okay, so tell me this: at the end of the first episode, who are those people?
Golly,
That's not the Hellfire Club.
no, and my first instinct, I was like, wait, Brotherhood? But I'm like, no,
because that's started by Magneto, isn't it?
correct. It was. But the reason why that was my first instinct was I said, well, they were always really a motley crew, and like the assembly of them never really matched on like in every timeline.
I mean, we saw some, from what little we saw of that crew that gets him out of the facility he's in. We saw some telekinetic powers,
Right.
for sure, from that one guy, and in the pool, somebody created that huge explosion. I suppose that could have been a device, but I don't think
Right.
it was. I think somebody created that huge explosion.
Right.
Did we see any others? Did we see any other abilities besides his own?
No, I don't believe so. I really localized everything that we saw to him. I think it's a little too early to start talking about the other external factors. I mean, again, you might be able to make an argument about Lenny, but I'm not going to touch that much. I want to see where that goes.
So you didn't really recognize any of those people, though.
Not specifically.
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Which again, considering if this does take place in the X-Men universe, that's fine because apparently they can and will do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
In that universe. So, and if we get another origin for Cyclops, I guess that's how that works. I do think it's interesting. They have said that they're going to go with him being Xavier's son. That will be interesting to see how they pull that off. I think that will. I think if they did get McAvoy to come in and play him for a couple scenes in an episode or something, I don't know how intricate of a role does him outside of obviously being Xavier's son. Does Xavier play a huge role in Legion's progress as a mutant? Besides him being the son?
To my knowledge, not as much. So there's this whole backstory about how that came to be. The whole idea was Xavier met Gabriel. I think her name was like Gabriel Howler or something like that. But he was working at this psychiatric facility helping like Holocaust trauma patients, and Xavier actually had no idea that she had become pregnant at first. But the whole point, what started the whole trauma for him was when he was super young, he was the victim of a terrorist attack. He was the only survivor. The trauma right there, that's what started to manifest his powers, if anything. So you really have this kind of separate identity. To my knowledge, like Xavier didn't even know for like the longest time that this was actually a thing. And then that actually came into place.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did you watch the preview after the episode?
No. I was saying beforehand, it was kind of annoying. I had there was a small chunk I missed in the middle, and then I had to get going because I had another call to take. So I did not see the preview. So you're gonna have to fill me in on that.
Well, the only one part I was going to bring up about that was that it looked like his sister had some mutant powers as well. Is that a thing in the comic?
The ones now, as far as like his sister and everything like that, I never remember a whole lot of family being related to Legion. I remember he was involved with Mystique for a while. I know she tracked him, and there was a whole side timeline with that. But as far as family,
okay, all right, that's all I got. That's all I got for the comic book nerd. I thought the show was great.
Yeah.
I particularly did enjoy the design of the show. I did know going into it that this was going to be done from the perspective of Legion. So when I saw trippy shit and I saw shit that wasn't right, I knew that was intentional. It wasn't just a really badly edited show. Everything was intentional, and I think they did a fantastic job with it. I'm definitely a fan for the first season. I can't wait to see where they go with it.
Yeah.
I do wish that at some point the powers that be for this X-Men universe get this shit together. I would love to see Legion interact with. I would love to see Legion interact with some of these other characters. I just seeing Legion and Deadpool for a moment together would be fantastic. Yeah, I thought it was great. I'm very much looking forward to it. Bravo. The producers, Bryan Singer, of which was one of them, really. It's my understanding that they really let this guy go to town on this whole thing, and he's I'm forgetting his name right now. I think it's Hallow or something like that. Mm-hmm. Did a great job. Great job. It was an entertaining show. Yeah.
Something I'll be looking forward.
That's where I'm at.
Hey, I'll be there each week too. Now this one you won't have to hold me to, as much as I know I haven't even watched Luke Cage, but I will stay up on this one, so I will not have to run into an issue like that.
All right, so that's not it. That's not it. We have one more thing to bring up, one more thing to talk about, and I think we talked about this when I brought up Legion.
Yeah.
There is more. There is more coming up. Fox has greenlit a pilot to be made for an upcoming X-Men TV series that will be on Fox. It'll be on their main non-cable channel. It is a story of a family who goes on the run when they discover that their son and daughter are mutants.
Sweet.
And the pilot, which will be a first, it's either a 2-part episode, or I'm sorry, a 2-hour episode or a 2-part episode, will be directed by Bryan Singer.
Love it.
They have all I've seen on this is that this will take place in the X-Men universe. I have not seen them say that it won't. So
well, or it will and it won't.
But wait, maybe next week. Maybe next week they'll say it won't. But Bryan Singer's even gone as far as to say that we may see appearances from previous X-Men and such, and they are casting other X-Men that we know from the comics to play a role in this.
Sweet.
Maybe. Here's the thing. Legion, and again, I didn't know anything about Legion until I heard about this show.
Yeah.
Going into production. Legion is the kind of show that can stand by itself. He's an obscure enough character, and at the same time, the character's, I think, interesting enough to stand alone and live in a series alone. Making an X-Men TV show based on based on the roots of the X-Men cannot.
Yeah, one thing about X-Men is there's always so many additional characters to pull out of the sidelines. I mean,
right.
you always have your mainline X-Men, but then you have your side ones like Banshee and Havoc and Colossus, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So theoretically, you can start these series and really kind of build a continuity of characters that don't get as much spotlight. You can try to base something around that. Question is, recognition ratio to, how much fans are either into those characters or what's the demand for them. Not certain, but there's a billion directions you could go with that.
Yeah. Well, and they have said definitively that this will take place in the X-Men movie universe, so it's really interesting. I don't want to see another Cyclops, another actor playing Cyclops.
Yeah.
They are going to replace Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, so that makes a little bit more sense. But I'm not excited for this other show. I think Legion's great. I'm looking forward to Legion. Give me Legion all day long. I'm looking forward to that whole series right now. It was beautifully done. Beautifully done TV show. This other show, I'm not excited for it. At all.
X-Men, look,
another continuity.
It's just like, why open another thread? Look, no lie.
Right.
At this point, we're heading towards what DC do with Infinite Crisis. Because every X amount of years, there's so much cross-up because Supergirl can't figure out if she's Power Girl, or if Power Girl is an Altean, or if she's a Kryptonian, or if she... So eventually they just take, 50 or 60 Earths and just collapse them all down in one continuum. Because it makes no sense.
This is why, and this is my biggest gripe overall, this is why X-Men Apocalypse didn't make even $600 million last year, when all the other comic book movies made more. Even the R-rated movie, which again was Deadpool, and had every right to break the records that it did. Deadpool made more. Batman v Superman made more. Suicide Squad made more. Obviously, Civil War made more. Doctor Strange made more. Down at the bottom of the list last year was X-Men Apocalypse. And that's because they have fucked over the continuity of this movie universe so much. It's like, for me, it's like the last Terminator movie that came out, where they they completely redid everything. You get to the point where why should the fans care when all you're going to do is just redo it all? And you're going to screw it up, and you're going to just start all over, or put a new actor in there. You're going to screw up the timeline. Seriously, that's what I think. I think it's to the point where the hardcore fans are even like, why? Why even fuck with it?
Yeah.
Why in X2 is Nightcrawler the same age in X2 when in the 80s he's the same age? And what part of the Days of Future Past timeline screwed that up?
I don't even, man.
But that's my point, though. But Legion was great. Deadpool was great. Logan looks great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they put themselves at a point where they can't wrap any of this shit together.
No.
Even if they say they want to, even if they say it is, you can say it all day long, but in every time that you've had to prove it, you've completely fudged it up.
Well, hey, I think at this point the question is, what do you guys think is great? I mean, I'm curious what people out there are looking forward to more. The TV series that we have, maybe more standalones. Maybe you want another X-Men, God forbid, another timeline or thread to open in this whole mess. Maybe there's something else you're looking forward to, or you just have your hopes pinned on Deadpool. Hey, please throw us a line. That's ksawmedia@gmail.com, and hey, give us a heads up. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, there it is. So, yeah, let us know what you think about where they should go with it. Let us know what you think about what we had to say here, if you think we're right or wrong.
So, and as always, you guys are more than welcome to faith, give a comment, like, or subscribe. But thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to catch you again soon. We'll be here with plenty more content and plenty of things to nerd out about, like always. But till then, this is Ian signing out.
And this is Chris.
Peace. Have a good one, people.